6:47 on a Tuesday morning. The coffee is still too hot to drink. The laptop is open on the kitchen counter, angled so the screen doesn't catch the overhead light. He logs in, types the password, waits for the two-factor code to arrive on his phone, enters it. The dashboard loads. There it is. $1,043,612. He looks at the number, picks up the coffee, sets it back down, looks at the number again. There is no one to call. Not because he has no one to call, but because the number is supposed to be the call. It is supposed to be the thing that announces itself, the finish line, the proof that the decades of discipline, of automatic transfers, of saying no to things that seemed reasonable at the time, that all of it added up, and it did add up. The number is right there, clean, green, verified. He doesn't feel finished. He doesn't feel much of anything, actually. There is a slight sense of order confirmed. The way you'd feel checking the oil in a car and finding it at the proper line. Good. Fine. The system is running. But there is no arrival. The cultural script around this moment is loud, even when no one is speaking it out loud. $1 million in retirement savings. That is the marker. Magazines have written about it. Financial advisors have built graphs around it. Friends at work, the few who discuss these things, have treated it like a destination. Once you hit 7 figures, you're set. He is not set. He knows this without anyone having told him. He knows it the way you know a roof needs work. Before the leak appears, something in the structure doesn't feel sealed. So he does what he always does. He looks at the system. He clicks on projection, a familiar screen. Retirement age, currently set at 62. Life expectancy, currently set at 85. Expected rate of return, inflation estimate. Monthly withdrawal target, all reasonable, all standard. He changes one field. Retirement age, 62 becomes 65. The projection shifts, not dramatically. The green bar stays green, but it gets thinner. The surplus line compresses. The margin narrows. He changes another field. Life expectancy, 85 becomes 95, the same $1 million. The same account, the same contributions, the same discipline, the same decades of showing up. The green turns amber. He didn't lose money. He changed a variable. One variable, how long he might live, and the entire meaning of the number restructured itself. The $1 million did not move. The safety did. He stares at the screen. The coffee is drinkable now. He drinks it. There is something in this moment that most financial commentary will not touch. Not because it's hidden, but because it doesn't fit the story. The story says, save enough and you win. The reality says, the definition of enough is not a number. It's a relationship between a number and a set of unknowns. And for a man sitting alone in his kitchen, the unknowns have a particular shape. No second income will appear if the market drops early. No partner's pension will cover the gap if a health event interrupts the timeline. No shared decision will distribute the weight of choosing when to stop working, where to live, what to spend, what to protect. The number is correct. The architecture around it is thin. He closes the laptop, washes the cup, puts on his jacket, drives to work. Nothing has changed. Everything has shifted. That evening, or maybe it's a week later, it doesn't matter because the pattern is the same. He comes back to the screen. This time not to check the balance. He checked the balance already. He knows the balance. This time he scrolls slowly, line by line, the things that sit beneath the number. Asset allocation. 60% equities, 35% bonds, 5% cash. Reasonable for his age. Maybe slightly aggressive, but he's been in the market long enough to tolerate the swings. He didn't panic in 2008. He didn't panic in 2020. He stayed in. That discipline is part of the architecture. Fees. He checks the expense ratios. Low. He moved everything to index funds years ago, after reading enough to understand that most active managers don't beat the index over time. He made that decision alone, researched it alone, implemented it alone. No advisor in the room, no second opinion over dinner. Last contribution, automatic, same amount every paycheck for the last 19 years. He increased it twice, once when he paid off the car, once when he got a raise he hadn't expected. Both times, the increase went straight to the 401k. No deliberation, no celebration, just an adjustment to the system. This is a tidy system on screen. The system behind it is less tidy, not messy, just exposed. One timeline, one set of health unknowns, one withdrawal stream, one decision maker for every choice from now until the account is empty or he is gone, whichever comes first. He doesn't frame it this way. No one frames it this way in the moment. He simply notices that the dashboard, for all its precision, answers a question he didn't ask and doesn't answer the one he did. The dashboard says, "You have accumulated this amount." The question he actually has, what can this amount actually do, given everything I don't know? And there is no tab for that. He does not tell anyone about the milestone. This is not a decision he makes consciously. He does not sit down and think, "I will keep this private." It simply doesn't occur to him to share it. The number is not a story. It's a status indicator. You don't call someone to say your oil is at the right level. But there's something else operating underneath the practicality. The number is supposed to speak for itself. That's the agreement. You do the work. You make the sacrifices. You skip the indulgences. And eventually, the result stands there and represents you. It says, this person was serious. This person was responsible. This person handled it. If you have to explain it, it loses something. If you have to announce it, it becomes performance. And performance is not the point. The point is the structure, the evidence, the proof that you did what you were supposed to do, even without anyone watching. So silence becomes a policy, not a secretive silence, just a clean one. The way a well-maintained building doesn't need a sign explaining that it's well-maintained. You can see it. The problem with this policy, and it is not a problem he would recognize as a problem, is that silence and competence become indistinguishable from isolation. When no one knows the architecture of your life, No one can check the architecture of your life. You become the sole inspector of a system that you also built, also operate, and also depend on. This works. It has worked for decades. There is no evidence that it will stop working, but there is also no redundancy. No second set of eyes. No one who will notice if a load-bearing assumption shifts and the structure begins to carry weight differently. He doesn't think about this. He dries the coffee cup, puts it back in the cabinet, same shelf, same position, and moves to the next task. Somewhere in the following days, maybe during a quiet stretch at work, maybe during the drive home, a thought forms. Not a worry, not an anxiety, just a structural observation that arrives without being invited. If this number doesn't actually feel secure, what number would? It's a reasonable question. And he tries to answer it the way he answers most questions with data. He runs the math in his head. 2 million? That would double the margin. 3? That would cover almost any scenario. 5? But each number he considers does the same thing. It feels adequate for a moment, and then the variables reassert themselves. How long? What happens to the market in the first 5 years? What health costs emerge? Whether the house needs a new roof or a new furnace or both. Whether inflation stays moderate or doesn't. Whether he can work until 65 or whether the body makes that decision for him. The number isn't the issue. The number is a fact. The issue is what the number is being asked to do. It's being asked to purchase certainty. And certainty is not for sale. This is not a financial insight. Every advisor knows this. Every article about retirement planning says some version of it. But knowing it intellectually and sitting alone in your kitchen, watching amber replace green on a projection screen, those are different experiences. The intellectual version is a paragraph in a brochure. The lived version is a quiet pressure that doesn't announce itself and doesn't leave. He doesn't spiral. He's not the spiraling type. He simply carries the question forward, the way you carry a stone in your pocket. It's there. It has weight. You notice it occasionally. You don't talk about it. And under the question about the number, there's another question. Quieter, less formed. Not really a question, yet more of a shape. If the number isn't buying security, what is it actually buying? Time? Access? Options? Permission? And if it's buying permission for what? Permission to stop? To rest? To say, I did enough? Because if it's buying permission, then the number is not a financial instrument. It's an identity verdict. And identity verdicts require a jury. And a man alone in his kitchen at 6:47 in the morning is both the defendant and the only juror in the room. The coffee is cold again. He pours it out. Starts fresh. The system continues. He runs the pressure test on a Saturday. Not because Saturday is special, but because Saturday is unstructured, and unstructured time is where the mind does its real accounting. The laptop is on the kitchen table this time. Same dashboard, same number. But now he's not looking at the balance. He's looking at the projection tool, and he's changing things. First scenario. A market correction of 30% in year one of retirement. Not a catastrophe. Not 2008, just a standard, historically recurring downturn that happens to land in the first 12 months after he stops working. The projection recalculates. The account drops. That's expected. What's less expected is how the withdrawal stream interacts with the drop. He's pulling money from a shrinking pool. The math is simple, but the implication isn't. A 30% drop doesn't cost 30% of his retirement. It costs more because the withdrawals compound the loss. The portfolio doesn't just need to recover. It needs to recover while being drained. He stares at the new number. The surplus he had, the comfortable green margin, is gone, not into deficit, just gone. The system is still technically functional, but the cushion that made it feel manageable has evaporated in a single hypothetical year. He resets the scenario, tries another. Medical interruption at 64. Not a catastrophe. He's careful about that word. A hip replacement, say, or a cardiac event that requires surgery and 3 months of recovery. Out-of-pocket costs after insurance, $40,000 to $60,000, depending on complications. Plus 3 months of not working, which means 3 months of drawing from savings earlier than planned. The projection shifts again. Different shape this time. The drop isn't as steep, but it's more persistent. The timeline compresses. The age at which the account hits a critical threshold moves forward by almost 2 years. 2 years. That's what one medical event costs in planning terms. Not the dollars, the time. The margin of error shrinks, and the decisions that were optional become mandatory. Move to a smaller place. Cut discretionary spending. Delay a purchase that might have mattered. He tries one more. Extended lifespan. 95 instead of 85. No crisis, no market drop, no medical event. Just 10 more years of living. The account doesn't survive. Not in the red, just depleted to a level where the last 5 years would require a fundamentally different kind of life. A smaller life. A constrained life. The kind of life where you count things you didn't used to count. He closes the projection tool. Not in frustration, in recognition. The account is stable. The sequence is not. A sequence is not a balance. A balance is a snapshot. A sequence is a story one thing happens, then another, and the order matters. A downturn in year 1 is not the same as a downturn in year 10. A medical event at 64 is not the same as a medical event at 78. The same events, reordered, produce different outcomes, and he has no control over the order. This is the part that the dashboard doesn't show. Not because it can't, the projection tool is right there, but because most people don't sit with it long enough. They check the balance, see green, and close the laptop. The balance is reassuring. The sequence is not. He sits with it, not because he's anxious, because he's thorough. Thoroughness is the trait that built the account in the first place. It's also the trait that now forces him to see what the account can't cover. There's a phrase that circulates in financial planning circles. The first 10 years of retirement determine the rest. It sounds like advice. It's actually a description of a structural vulnerability. If the market cooperates in the first decade, the withdrawals are sustainable, and the portfolio has time to recover from later disruptions. If the market doesn't cooperate, if there's a significant downturn in those early years, the math shifts permanently. The portfolio enters a drawdown spiral that no amount of later recovery can fully repair. For a couple, this risk is distributed. One person can return to work temporarily, or they can reduce expenses by sharing resources more efficiently, or they can stagger their retirement, one working while the other draws down, creating a buffer. For a single person, the risk is concentrated. There is no stagger. There is no second income to absorb the shock. There is no one to say, "I'll cover the groceries this year while the market recovers." The entire sequence lands on one system, one account, one person. He knows this, not as a statistic, but as a fact of his architecture. He built a strong system, a disciplined system, but it's a single thread system, one thread. If that thread holds, everything works. If that thread is interrupted by market timing, by health, by an expense that arrives at the wrong moment, there is no second thread to carry the load. This is not a flaw, it's a design consequence. He didn't choose to be single for financial reasons, and the financial structure isn't a judgment on his life. It's simply the shape that a single income, single decision, single timeline retirement takes. And that shape has properties, strengths and exposures. The strength is control. The exposure is concentration. It is worth noting what concentration means in practice. It means that every financial decision he has ever made was evaluated by one mind, his mind, and his mind is good. It has made sound decisions consistently. But a single evaluator, no matter how skilled, has blind spots that are structural, not personal. They are the blind spots that any single perspective produces simply by being single. A second perspective does not need to be smarter. It needs to be different. A partner who asks, "Are you sure about that allocation?" Not because she has a better answer, but because the question itself forces a re-examination, provides a function that no amount of individual research can replicate. The function is external challenge. An external challenge is the mechanism by which assumptions get tested before the market tests them. He has compensated for this. He reads, he researches. He stress tests his own assumptions with the projection tool. These are real compensations, and they have worked. But they are all internal. He is checking his own work with his own standards, using his own criteria. The system is auditing itself. And self-auditing in any domain, accounting, engineering, medicine, is considered insufficient for a reason. The reason is that the auditor and the auditee share the same assumptions. The assumptions that need checking are precisely the ones neither can see. This is not an argument for marriage. It is an observation about information architecture. A single input system processes information through one filter. A dual input system processes information through two. The redundancy is not about capacity. It is about perspective. And perspective is the resource that a single thread life, by definition, cannot generate internally. The weeks pass. The number stays roughly. The same markets are quiet. Contributions continue. The system hums. But something has shifted in the way he relates to it. Before the pressure test, the number was a destination. After the pressure test, The number is a resource inside a larger system, and the larger system has variables he cannot control. This is not despair. He's not the despairing type. It's more like the moment a pilot checks the fuel gauge and realizes the gauge is accurate, but the headwind is stronger than forecast. The fuel is the fuel. The question is the route. He doesn't talk about this at work. There's a guy in his department, maybe 5 years younger, who recently hit some milestone of his own. He mentioned it in the break room, not the number, just the category. Finally feel like I'm on track. A younger guy said it the way people say these things, half proud, half looking for confirmation. A few people nodded. Someone said, "That's the dream." He didn't say anything. Not because he disagreed, but because he'd already been past that moment. The milestone arrived. The feeling didn't follow. And explaining that gap to someone who hasn't experienced it felt like explaining color to someone reading about it. The information would transfer. The recognition wouldn't. So he nodded and went back to his desk. This is how the privacy compounds. Not through secrecy, but through a lack of shared reference points. The experience he's having $1 million account that doesn't feel like what it was supposed to feel like, doesn't fit any conversation he's likely to have. It's not a complaint. Complaining about having $1 million is absurd, and he knows it. It's not a fear. He's not afraid. It's a structural observation that lives in a category no one talks about. The category of systems that are succeeding on their own terms, but may not be sufficient for the actual conditions ahead. He carries this the way he carries most things, quietly, competently, without asking anyone to hold part of the weight. And this is perhaps the most important thing to understand about the privacy. It is not avoidance. It is not denial. It is the logical outcome of a life in which the primary relationship is between a man and his system. The system works. The system has always worked. The system does not require explanation, and explaining it would change its nature. It would turn a fact into a narrative, and narratives invite opinions, and opinions invite interference. And interference is what the system was designed to exclude. The exclusion worked. The system is clean. The man is solvent. The life is ordered. The price of that cleanliness is that the system is also opaque, visible only to its operator, understood only by its builder, and dependent entirely on the continued functioning of both. A question forms over time, more like a background process that runs while the rest of the operating system handles the visible tasks. What happens when a man hits the culturally correct number and the system still doesn't close? The culturally correct number. That phrase is worth sitting with. There's a version of the American retirement story that works like a combination lock. Save enough. Hit the target. The lock opens. You're free. You did it. But the lock didn't open. The number is there. The freedom isn't. Not because he can't retire technically. He could. The projections, in their base case, say he's fine. But fine in a base case is not the same as fine in the actual world, where cases don't stay base for long. What didn't close is the gap between the number and the certainty it was supposed to deliver. The number delivered solvency. It did not deliver resolution. And for a man who has spent 30 years treating financial discipline as the primary evidence of a well-managed life. The absence of resolution is not a small thing. It raises a question he has no framework for. Not, do I have enough money? He can answer that question. The answer is, probably under favorable conditions. The question underneath is different. If the money doesn't close the system, what does? He doesn't have the answer. He's not supposed to have the answer yet. The question is still forming. But it's the right question. And it sits in the kitchen with him on Tuesday mornings, next to the coffee and a laptop and the clean green number that means less than it should. The dashboard is still open. The cursor blinks. The system waits. And somewhere in the space between the number and the man, a different kind of accounting has begun. The apartment is clean. Not obsessively clean, not the kind of clean that signals something wrong. Just maintained. Surfaces wiped, dishes done before bed, trash taken out on schedule. The kind of clean that happens when one person lives in a space and that person has a system. The furniture is decent, not new, not old. A couch replaced about 6 years ago when the previous one developed a sag that bothered him every time he sat down. A television mounted properly, cables hidden. A bookshelf with actual books, some read, some half read. A few that function more as reminders of an intention than evidence of completion. The car in the lot is paid off. A sedan may be 8 years old, 60,000 miles. Oil changed on schedule. Tires rotated. Brakes replaced last spring before they became a problem, because he listens for the sound and acts before the sound becomes a noise. This is a constructed life, not in the pejorative sense, in the engineering sense. Each element chosen, maintained, and replaced according to a logic that doesn't need to be explained to anyone because no one is asking. Automatic transfers move money from checking to savings on the 1st and 15th. The 401k contribution is maxed. The credit card balance is paid in full every month. He has never carried a balance. Not once, and if you asked him about it, he wouldn't say it with pride exactly, but with a kind of factual certainty that suggests the alternative was never seriously considered. There is no chaos in this life, no drama, no emergencies born of neglect. The emergency fund sits in a high-yield savings account, untouched, accruing its modest interest like a fire extinguisher mounted on a wall in a building that has never had a fire. The work calendar is the organizing spine. Monday through Friday, sometimes a Saturday if a project requires it. Meetings, deadlines, deliverables. The calendar tells him where to be and when, and in exchange, it provides something that is easy to overlook until it's gone. A reason to maintain the structure. Without the calendar, the apartment is just an apartment. With it, the apartment is a base of operations. The distinction matters more than it appears to. There is a rhythm to the days that he does not notice because it has been running so long. Wake at 6. Coffee by 6:15. Check the phone, not social media, just the weather and the headlines, enough to orient to the world. Shower. Dress. The clothes are practical. He is not performing for anyone. He is equipping himself for the day the way a mechanic puts on coveralls, the uniform of function. The drive to work takes 22 minutes in normal traffic. He knows this number because he has made the drive approximately 5,000 times. The route is optimized. He tried 3 alternatives in the first year and settled on the one that avoids the school zone and the left turn at the intersection where the signal timing is wrong. At the office, the day has shape. Meetings provide checkpoints. Tasks provide purpose. Colleagues provide friction, not the unpleasant kind, the useful kind. The kind that keeps the mind from settling too deeply into its own grooves. Someone disagrees with his approach. Someone asks a question he hadn't considered. Someone makes a decision that affects his work and requires him to adapt. These are small disruptions, and they are valuable in a way he would not articulate because they prevent the routine from becoming a closed system. The evening mirrors the morning. Home by 5:45. A meal prepared himself, usually something simple and nutritious. He learned to cook in his 30s, not from passion, but from a practical observation that eating out every night was expensive, unhealthy, and slow. He cooks the way he manages the portfolio, efficiently, with minimal waste, according to a rotation that balances variety against effort. After dinner, the evening opens. This is the unstructured portion. Reading, a show, sometimes a call to his brother, to a friend, to no one. The unstructured hours are comfortable because they are earned. They follow a day of structured effort. They are rest that follows work. They make sense inside the larger pattern. On weekends, the pattern loosens. Saturday has errands, maintenance, the occasional project. Sunday is quieter. These days are his in a way that weekdays are not, and they are fine. They are not empty, but they are also not organized by anything external. And that difference, the difference between time that is structured by obligation and time that is structured only by habit, is a difference he will feel more acutely when the weekdays begin to resemble the weekends. That day is coming. The projection tool says so. The calendar says so. The body, in its quiet way, says so. And the question of what replaces the rhythm, what provides the checkpoints, the friction, the small disruptions that keep the grooves from deepening, is a question that the current rhythm does not have time to answer. Independence in this life is not a philosophy. It's a design principle. No shared debt. He has never co-signed a loan, never merged finances, never had a joint account. His credit history is a single clean line from his mid-20s to now, uninterrupted by anyone else's decisions. No shared crisis. When his car needed a transmission at 41, he handled it. When the company restructured at 46 and his department was reorganized, he navigated it. When his father's health declined and the logistics of long-distance caregiving became a second job for 18 months, he managed it without taking a leave of absence, without missing a contribution, without letting the system falter. No compromises. The apartment is the size he needs. The car is the car he chose. The retirement allocation is the allocation he researched and implemented. Every decision in the system passed through one filter. Does this make sense? And make sense was defined by one person, which meant it was defined consistently. This has worked. This is not in dispute. The evidence is the $1 million account, the clean credit, the maintained car, the functional apartment, the uninterrupted career. By every external metric, this is a life that has been managed well. The hidden cost is not dramatic, it's structural. No shared redundancy. Redundancy is an engineering term. It means having a backup system that activates when the primary system fails. In a bridge, it's the extra cables. In a server network, it's the mirror that takes over when the main goes down. In a household with 2 adults, it's the fact that if one person gets sick, loses a job, makes a bad decision, or simply has a terrible month, the other person is there, not as a savior, as a backup system. A single-person life has no built-in redundancy. Every function runs through one operator. If that operator is functioning well, and he is, the system runs cleanly. If that operator is interrupted, the system doesn't switch to a backup. It just pauses. Or it runs degraded. Or, in a long enough interruption, it begins to fail in ways that compound because there's no one monitoring the cascading effects. He doesn't think about this. Why would he? The system has never failed. The backup has never been needed. The fire extinguisher has never been used. But the fire extinguisher is still there. And the redundancy is not. The milestone narrative in American life is simple, and it is powerful because it is simple. You work, you save. You hit the number, you're safe. This narrative has survived decades of financial crises, market corrections, and policy changes because it does something that more nuanced narratives cannot do. It provides a finish line, and a finish line provides motivation, and motivation provides discipline, and discipline provides the account balance that justifies the entire loop. He followed this narrative faithfully. Not because he read it in a book, though. He read some books, but because it aligned with something deeper. The narrative said, if you are disciplined, you will be rewarded with security. And discipline was already his operating mode. The narrative didn't change him. It confirmed him. The internal equation was never exactly what the magazines described. The magazines said, save enough and you'll be free. His version was slightly different, and the difference matters. His version said, save enough and you'll be legitimate. Legitimate, not free, not happy, not relaxed. Legitimate, as in, a person whose life has been conducted seriously. A person who cannot be accused of carelessness or foolishness or drift. A person who, if examined, would pass the examination. This is not vanity. It's something more structural than vanity. It's the use of financial discipline as evidence of personal worth in a life where the usual evidence, marriage, family, shared milestones, is absent. The account balance fills a role that extends beyond money. It's a credential. It says, this person showed up. This person committed. This person did the work. And now the credential is on the screen, and it's a strong credential, and it doesn't feel like enough. Not because the number is wrong, but because the question it was supposed to answer, am I a serious person? Turns out to be a question that numbers can't fully answer. They can support the case. They can't close it. The cultural equation says, I saved, therefore I'm safe. The internal equation says, I saved, therefore I'm legitimate. And the gap between those two statements is where the real accounting happens. There is a specific kind of vulnerability that attaches to a single thread system, and it has nothing to do with weakness. A single thread system is one in which all critical functions run on one line of execution. In computing, this means the system processes one task at a time efficient, clean, predictable. But if that single thread encounters a problem it can't resolve, the entire system halts. There's no second thread to pick up the work. There's no parallel process running in the background, ready to take over. His life is a single thread system, one income history, one set of investment decisions, one healthcare plan, one housing arrangement, one daily routine, one person making every call, absorbing every result, adjusting every variable. When the thread is running well, and it has been running well for a long time, the system is elegant, lean, no waste, no conflict, no negotiation, just execution. But the thread is also the only thread, and threads don't run forever. This is not a panic observation. It's an architectural fact. The same fact that applies to any system built on a single point of continuity. The system's strength, its simplicity, its coherence, its lack of friction is also its exposure. Because the simplicity that makes it efficient in normal conditions is the same simplicity that makes it fragile under stress. He wouldn't use the word fragile. He'd push back on that. The system has survived every stress it's encountered. And he'd be right. But the stresses it's encountered so far have been the stresses of an employed, healthy, cognitively sharp 50-something man. The stresses ahead, the stresses of aging, of potential health disruption, of eventual cognitive change, of a retirement that could last 30 years, those are different in kind, not just degree. A strong balance can still be a fragile system if it has no redundancy. He doesn't hear this thought. Not yet. It's still forming somewhere below the level of conscious assessment, in the space where structural truths accumulate before the mind is ready to look at them directly. For now, the system runs. The thread holds, the coffee is made, the car starts, the contribution posts, and the number on the screen stays green, and the man in the kitchen stays composed, and the distance between those two facts grows so slowly that neither one seems to move. The moment arrives differently for different men, but it arrives. The moment when the milestone doesn't grant permission to stop. He expected not consciously, not in any articulated way, that crossing the threshold would change something internal, that $1 million in retirement savings would produce a feeling, not euphoria. He's not wired for euphoria, but something, a settling, a sense that the machinery could idle, that the urgency powering the discipline could finally ease, the way a motor eases when it reaches cruising speed. It didn't happen. The discipline continues because the discipline is what he does. The automatic transfers post. The contributions max. The fees stay low. The allocation holds. The operation hums. And the urgency, the quiet, chronic sense that there is more to do, more to secure, more to prove sits in exactly the same place it sat before the number appeared. This is the trap, and it's important to see it clearly because it doesn't look like a trap. It looks like responsibility. The trap is this: when financial discipline has served as the primary structure of a life, the organizing principle, the evidence of seriousness, the thing that makes the days cohere, then achieving the financial goal doesn't end the structure. It exposes it, because the goal was never really the number. The goal was the activity. The number was a target painted on a wall to give the activity direction. And now the target has been hit, and the activity hasn't stopped. And the question that surfaces is one that financial planning was never designed to answer. What was the discipline for? Not in the past tense. He knows what it was for. It was for this: the account, the solvency, the proof. The question is present tense. What is the discipline for now? What is it pointed at? What is it building toward? The answer, when he sits with it long enough, is maintenance. The discipline is now maintaining the system it created, and maintenance is necessary. But maintenance is not the same as building. And a life organized around building that transitions to a life organized around maintenance undergoes a shift that no one talks about, because from the outside, nothing has changed. He still gets up at the same time, still drives the same route, still checks the same dashboard, still carries the same competence into the same rooms. But the engine has shifted from forward motion to holding pattern. And holding patterns are sustainable. Planes do it for hours. But no pilot confuses a holding pattern with flying somewhere. The identity implication here is worth examining without sentimentality, because sentimentality would distort it. For a man who is not married, who has not had children, who has not built the conventional relational architecture that American culture treats as the default evidence of a life fully inhabited, for that man, the account balance is not only money, it is proof that the life was conducted seriously, proof that autonomy was not laziness, proof that independence was not avoidance, proof that the absence of a family was not the absence of commitment. The balance says, I committed to something. I showed up for something. I built something. Look at it. It's right there, in verified digits, audited annually, growing according to compound interest and disciplined allocation. This is not pathological. This is adaptive. In a culture that measures adult success primarily through relational milestones, marriage, children, family holidays, shared homes, a man who has none of these needs an alternative credential. The credential doesn't need to be conscious. It just needs to function. And the account balance functions beautifully. It's objective. It's measurable. It can't be argued with until it can. Because when the number arrives and the feeling doesn't follow, when $1 million sits on a screen and the internal response is not, I made it, but I need to check the projection again, something in the credential system cracks. Not breaks, cracks. A hairline fracture in the logic that connected financial discipline to personal legitimacy. The crack says, the number proved I was disciplined. It did not prove I was safe. And if discipline was the thing I offered in place of everything else, and discipline produced a number that doesn't produce safety, then what exactly did I build? He doesn't think this in these words. No one thinks in these words in their kitchen on a Tuesday. But the crack is there, running through the logic like a stress line in a load-bearing wall. The wall still stands. The load still holds. But the line is visible if you know where to look. Secure for what? That's the question that lives under all the other questions. And it doesn't arrive with drama. It arrives the way most important questions arrive for men like him quietly, during a mundane task in the space between one obligation and the next. Secure for what? Not secure from what? That question has answers. Secure from poverty. Secure from dependence. Secure from the indignity of asking. Those are clear threats, and the account addresses them. The account is a wall against those things, and the wall is solid. But secure for what is a different kind of question. It asks about direction, not protection. It asks what the security is in service of. What future is this money supposed to fund? What does the next chapter look like, and who is in it? The shoe is the part that catches. Not because he's lonely. That word is too simple, too loaded, too close to the therapeutic language he instinctively resists. It's not loneliness. It's something more structural. A future without relational continuity is hard to plan for, not emotionally, but logistically, because planning requires specificity. You plan for a house because you can picture the house. You plan for a trip because you can picture the destination. You plan for a grandchild's education because you can picture the grandchild. What do you picture when the future is just you in the same apartment with the same routine for 30 more years? The answer is, you picture the routine, and the routine is fine. But the routine doesn't generate the kind of specificity that makes the future feel worth funding. It generates maintenance. And maintenance, as we said, is not the same as building. So the money sits in the account, and the account is healthy, and the future it's supposed to serve is real but abstract, like a bridge built to a shore you can see but haven't visited. The engineering is sound. The destination is unclear. This is the existential layer, and it sits beneath the financial layer the way bedrock sits beneath the foundation. You can build on it without seeing it. You can live your entire life without looking at it. But when the foundation develops that hairline crack, when the number arrives and the feeling doesn't, the bedrock becomes relevant. Because the crack didn't start in the money. It started in the meaning. And meaning, unlike money, doesn't compound on its own. He closes the laptop. Not for the last time. He'll open it again tomorrow, and the day after, and the week after that. The dashboard will be there. The number will be there, plus or minus the market's daily verdict. But something has shifted. Not visibly. Not in any way that would register on the dashboard or in the calendar or in the clean, maintained apartment where everything is in its place. The shift is this. He has begun to suspect that he didn't build a retirement. He built a balance. And a balance, however large, is not a system. A system has inputs and outputs and feedback loops and contingencies and a purpose that extends beyond its own preservation. His balance has inputs. It has outputs. It has the feedback loop of the dashboard, which tells him what he already knows. What it doesn't have, what it has never needed to have, until now, is a purpose that extends beyond not running out. Not running out is the floor. It's necessary. It's the thing that everything else stands on, but it is not a life. It is the prevention of a specific kind of failure. And a life organized primarily around the prevention of failure is a life that works, that functions, that maintains, but that doesn't, on its own terms, go anywhere. The number on the screen is not wrong. The meaning assigned to it is incomplete. He knows this now. Not as a conclusion. Conclusions are too tidy for something this structural. More as an awareness. A background process that runs alongside the daily operations, not interfering with them, not disrupting the system, but present, persistent, quietly rewriting the terms of an equation he thought he'd solved. The coffee cup is clean. The car keys are on the hook. The alarm is set for tomorrow. The routine holds. The question holds with it. The math of solo retirement is not complicated. That's what makes it difficult to look at. If it were complicated, you could hire someone to explain it, nod along, and trust that the complexity was being handled. But it's not complicated. It's plain. And plain things that carry uncomfortable implications tend to get filed in the back of the mind, behind the things that feel more urgent. Here is the plain version. One person, one portfolio, one withdrawal stream. Every dollar that comes out comes from one account. Every year that passes draws from one reserve. Every surprise medical, structural, economic is absorbed by one system. A couple retiring on the same total amount of money has a different structure. Not more money, necessarily. Just a different architecture. 2 Social Security checks instead of 1. 2 medical histories, which means the probability of both people being incapacitated at the same time is lower than the probability of one person being incapacitated alone. 2 sets of professional networks, which means more pathways back to part-time work if the market drops early. 2 people who can alternate between drawing down and holding, between resting and producing, between needing care and providing it. None of this is about love or companionship or emotional support. This is mechanical. This is how 2-unit systems absorb shocks differently than single-unit systems. The same way 2 engines on a plane create redundancy that 1 engine cannot. The single engine can be more powerful, more efficient, better maintained. It's still 1 engine. He doesn't compare himself to couples. That's not where his mind goes. He's not in the habit of measuring his life against a template he didn't choose. But the structural difference exists whether he looks at it or not, the way gravity exists whether you think about it or not. And the structural difference affects the math. The math says a solo retiree withdrawing 4% annually from $1 million portfolio can expect roughly $40,000 a year before taxes. Add Social Security, call it $20,000, depending on earnings history and claiming age, and the total income is around $60,000. In most of the country, that's livable. In some parts, it's comfortable. But livable and comfortable assume a baseline. They assume the portfolio doesn't take a significant hit in the early years. They assume healthcare costs stay within the range of current projections, which is an assumption that has been wrong in the same direction for 40 years running. They assume no major housing disruption, no emergency relocation, no extensive repair, No need for assisted living at a cost that can consume $5,000 to $10,000 a month. Any one of these assumptions can fail. In a two-person household, the failure is distributed. In a single-person household, it lands whole. Living longer is treated, in the popular narrative, as a good thing. And it is a good thing. But it is also a multiplier. And what it multiplies is uncertainty. A man who retires at 65 and lives to 85 faces 20 years of retirement, 20 years of withdrawals, 20 years of inflation, 20 years of healthcare costs escalating as the body does what bodies do. The portfolio needs to survive 20 years. That's the planning horizon. A man who retires at 65 and lives to 95 faces 30 years, not 10 more years of the same. 10 more years in which needs change. The first decade of retirement might look like the last decade of work-active, independent, self-sufficient. The second decade starts to shift. Energy changes. Mobility changes. The tasks that were effortless become tasks that require effort. The things handled in an afternoon start taking a day. The third decade, if it comes, changes the equation entirely. The third decade is where independence meets biology, and biology wins. Not dramatically, not necessarily catastrophically, but steadily. The body that maintained the car and cleaned the apartment and drove to work and carried the groceries becomes a body that needs assistance with some of those things. Maybe all of those things. And assistance costs money. Not the kind of money that shows up in retirement calculators, which tend to project a smooth, inflation-adjusted withdrawal over a fixed period. The kind of money that arrives without warning in large irregular amounts for services that didn't exist in the original plan, because the original plan assumed a version of the future that looked like a slightly older version of the present. The 10-year extension is not 10 more years of the same. It's 10 more years of change. And change in a single-person system means that the sole operator of the system is also the component most likely to degrade. There is a specific way this plays out that rarely appears in planning conversations. The transition from the second decade to the third is not a single event. It is a series of micro-transitions, each one small enough to dismiss and large enough to accumulate. The first micro-transition might be driving. Not an accident, not a revoked license, just a narrowing. Night driving becomes uncomfortable. Highway merging becomes stressful. The radius of comfortable driving shrinks from 50 miles to 20 to 10. For a man in a suburb or a rural area, driving is not recreation. It is infrastructure. It is how groceries arrive, how medical appointments are kept, how the world stays accessible. When driving contracts, everything contracts with it. The second micro-transition might be cooking. The full meals he prepared for decades become simpler. The grocery trips become less frequent. The variety decreases. This is not depression. This is logistics. Shopping for one has always been inefficient. The smallest package of chicken is still too much. The produce goes bad before it's finished, and as energy decreases, the inefficiency becomes a reason to simplify. Simplification becomes routine. Routine becomes nutritional narrowing. And nutritional narrowing, over years, compounds into health consequences that generate their own costs. The third micro-transition might be paperwork. The stack that was managed promptly at 55 gets managed weekly at 75. By 85, it is managed sporadically. An insurance form is filed late. A tax document is misplaced. A renewal notice goes unread. Each lapse is minor. The pattern is not. These micro-transitions are invisible to retirement projections because they are not financial events. They are operational events. They affect the cost of living, not by increasing expenses directly, but by reducing the efficiency of the person managing those expenses. And in a single-person system, the efficiency of the operator is the efficiency of the entire operation. There's a concept in financial planning called sequence of returns risk. It sounds technical. It is technical. But the core idea is almost brutally simple. The order in which investment returns occur matters as much as the average return. A portfolio that gains 10% for 5 years and then loses 20% ends up in a different place than a portfolio that loses 20% first and then gains 10% for 5 years, even though the average return over the period might be similar. This matters most in the early years of retirement because that's when withdrawals begin. A man drawing $40,000 a year from a portfolio that drops 30% in year one is not just 30% poorer. He's drawing $40,000 from a smaller pool, which means the portfolio has to recover by more than 30% just to get back to where it started, while still funding the withdrawal. The math spirals. Not explosively, but persistently. For a younger person still working, a market drop is a temporary event. Contributions continue, time is long, recovery is likely. For a retiree, a market drop is a structural event. The contributions have stopped. The withdrawals have started. Time is now working against the portfolio instead of for it. And the single retiree has no buffer. No spouse returning to part-time work to reduce the withdrawal for 2 years. No second income to pause the drawdown while the market recovers. No one to say, we'll eat out less. I'll take the contract job. We'll delay the trip. Just the account. Just the market. Just the sequence. A downturn in year one of retirement is not just less money. It changes the sequence of choices that follow. Delay retirement further. Reduce spending sooner. Relocate earlier. Accept a smaller margin for everything that comes after. Each choice narrows the next choice, and the narrowing is permanent because time only moves in one direction. He ran this scenario on his laptop, sitting at the kitchen table. He saw the numbers. He understood them. What he may not have fully registered is that for him, the sequence risk is not shared. It doesn't land on a household. It lands on a person. One person making every adjustment, absorbing every consequence, alone. There is a category of expenses that doesn't appear in most retirement projections because it doesn't have a name. Call it the operational tax of aging alone. It's the things that break. Not dramatically, not the roof collapsing. The smaller things. The dryer that stops heating. The bathroom faucet that leaks at a rate too slow to be urgent and too persistent to ignore. The window seal that fails and lets in cold air. the gutter that pulls away from the fascia. In a shared household, these are split not just financially, but logistically. One person calls the repair service. The other person is home to let them in. One person researches the replacement. The other person picks it up. The cognitive labor distributes across two minds, and the distribution makes each task smaller. In a single household, every task is full-sized. Every call, every appointment, every decision, every follow-up sits on one desk. The dryer breaks, and it's not just a repair, it's research, scheduling, being home for the appointment, paying the invoice, and deciding whether the repair is worth it or whether it's time to replace. That's a Tuesday. And Tuesday has other things on it. This scales. As the years pass and the body accumulates its own maintenance requirements, doctor appointments, medication management, physical therapy, dietary adjustments, the administrative load increases. And the load doesn't care that there's only one person carrying it. It arrives at full weight. The costs that don't announce themselves. Home maintenance, appliance replacement, yard work that was once done personally and now requires hiring someone, snow removal, cleaning services, the slow transition from doing everything yourself to paying someone to do the things the body no longer handles easily. None of these costs are catastrophic individually. Collectively, over a decade or two, they represent a persistent drain that doesn't appear on the projection dashboard. The dashboard shows the big categories: housing, healthcare, taxes, discretionary. It doesn't show the operational friction of running a life alone, which increases as the operator ages and the operation doesn't simplify. There is another cost category that operates on a longer timeline: healthcare. Not the emergency kind, not the cardiac event or the hip replacement already discussed. The chronic kind, the kind that builds. At 55, his healthcare costs are manageable. Insurance through work covers the major risks. Out-of-pocket expenses are predictable. A physical once a year, a dental visit twice, may be a prescription that runs $60 a month. The numbers are small. They fit inside the budget without straining it. At 65, Medicare begins. That helps. But Medicare does not cover everything, and the things it does not cover are precisely the things that increase as the body ages. Dental work becomes more extensive. Vision changes require new prescriptions, sometimes procedures. Hearing aids, if needed, run $3,000 to $5,000 and are replaced every few years. None of these are covered by standard Medicare. At 75, the costs shift again. Medications multiply. A condition managed with one pill at 65 requires 2 pills and a specialist at 75. The specialist is 30 miles away. The drive takes an hour. The appointment takes half a day when you account for waiting, consulting, driving back. And the co-pays accumulate. Not catastrophically, persistently. At 85, if the projection extends that far, the costs are no longer about treating conditions. They are about maintaining function, physical therapy to preserve mobility, occupational therapy to preserve independence, home modifications, grab bars, walk-in showers, ramp access. These are not medical expenses in the traditional sense. They are infrastructure expenses, and they arrive in a life that was designed when infrastructure meant a working furnace and a sound roof. For a man with a partner, these costs are absorbed into a shared budget and a shared logistics system. One person drives to the appointment while the other handles the errands. One person manages the insurance paperwork while the other manages the household. The cognitive and financial load distributes. For a man alone, each cost arrives with its full administrative weight attached. The appointment requires his time. The paperwork requires his attention. The insurance dispute requires his persistence. And the cumulative effect, not of any single cost, but of all of them layered on top of each other, year after year, with no one to share the carrying, is a slow increase in operational drag that the projection tool on his dashboard does not model. Housing deserves its own examination. Not the mortgages is paid, not the maintenance, he handles it. The question is structural. What does it mean to age alone in a space designed for a younger version of yourself? The house has stairs. At 53, stairs are nothing. At 63, they are still nothing. At 73, they are a consideration. At 83, they are a barrier. The bedroom is upstairs. The kitchen is downstairs. The laundry is in the basement. This layout works when the body cooperates. When the body begins to negotiate, the layout becomes a daily series of small compromises that no one else sees. The decision to stay or move is one of the largest financial decisions a solo retiree will make. Staying means maintaining a property that may become increasingly difficult to manage alone. Moving means transaction costs, relocation logistics, and the psychological weight of leaving a space that has been the physical container of the life. For a couple, this decision is discussed. Options are weighed. One person's preference balances against the other's. The decision, whatever it is, carries the weight of shared deliberation. For a man alone, the decision sits on his desk like every other decision. And because it is large and complex and uncomfortable, it is easy to defer. And deferral, in housing decisions, compounds. The stairs don't get easier. The maintenance doesn't decrease. The yard doesn't shrink. Each year of deferral makes the eventual move more disruptive and more expensive. And each year, the man is 1 year older when he finally makes it. The identity implication tightens here, and it is worth pausing on. Work was not just income. It was evidence. Daily, renewable evidence that the system was functional, that the operator was competent, that the life justified itself through output. Every project completed was a small verdict. You are still producing. You are still relevant. You still have a role. Retirement removes the daily verdict. And for a man whose identity is built on competence, on handling, on managing, on producing results, the removal of that daily verdict does not create a vacuum. It creates an ambiguity. The competence is still there. The evidence is not. He knows he is competent, but knowing and demonstrating are different operations. Knowing is internal. Demonstrating is external. And when the external channel closes, when there are no more projects, no more deadlines, no more performance reviews, No more colleagues who see the work and confirm its quality. The internal knowing has to sustain itself without reinforcement. This is harder than it sounds. Not because the man doubts himself. He does not doubt himself. But because self-knowledge without external confirmation becomes a closed loop. I am competent because I have always been competent. The evidence is my history. And history, unlike a current project, does not refresh. The account balance serves as a kind of residual evidence. It says, look at what the competence built. But residual evidence depreciates in a way that current evidence does not. Last year's accomplishment feels different from today's. The balance was built over decades. It is a monument to past competence. It is not proof of present competence. And the distinction, for a man who has organized his identity around doing, matters more than he would admit. If work was the stabilizer, and it was then retirement removes the stabilizer. This is not about money, or not only about money. It's about what the work calendar provided beyond income, structure, purpose, external validation. A reason to maintain the system at a high level of functioning. The office didn't just pay him, it organized him. It told him when to be sharp, when to deliver, when to be present. It provided a daily test that he passed consistently, and the passing of that test was a form of feedback that confirmed his competence. Not through praise, he didn't need praise. Through function. He functioned well. The work proved it. Every completed project, every met deadline, every problem solved was a data point in a running argument that his life was working. Remove the work, and the argument loses its primary source of evidence. The apartment is still clean. The car is still maintained. The contributions still post. But the feedback loop that connected daily effort to daily confirmation is gone. What replaces it? The dashboard, the number. The same screen, the same login, the same green bar. But the green bar doesn't ask anything of him. It doesn't test his competence. It just reports a balance. And a balance, as we've established, is not a system. The question becomes, what holds the day together when the calendar no longer validates you? When the morning doesn't have a meeting, and the afternoon doesn't have a deadline, and the evening doesn't have the quiet satisfaction of having handled what needed handling? He doesn't know yet. He's still working. The calendar still runs. The stabilizer is still in place. But the projection tool on his laptop isn't just projecting money. It's projecting a future in which the thing that currently makes the life feel solid work is no longer there. And in that future, the money is present, but the structure is not. Money is designed to support a future self. But when future has no shared witness, no one to plan with, no one to anticipate with, no one to argue with about the details, the mind discounts it. Not financially, psychologically. The future becomes abstract, a concept more than a destination. And abstract futures are harder to fund. Not because the money isn't there, but because the motivation to protect something you can't quite picture begins to erode at the edges. The system becomes technically sound and psychologically unanchored. Security is not a balance. It's an option set that survives stress. He doesn't have the option set yet. He has the balance, and the balance is strong. But strength and resilience are different properties. Strength is what you have before the stress arrives. Resilience is what you have after. And resilience, in a system with no backup, no second thread, no shared decision authority, resilience is the thing that the dashboard cannot measure and the man at the kitchen table has not yet tested. The projection tool blinks. The cursor waits. The coffee cools. The math is clear. The meaning is still catching up. He has rules. They're not written down. They don't need to be. They've been operating so long, they feel less like rules and more like facts about how the world works. Don't ask for help. Not because help is shameful, but because needing help means the system has a gap, and the system shouldn't have gaps. Handle your own affairs. If something breaks, fix it. If something is complicated, research it until it's not. If something requires a decision, make the decision. Don't burden others with problems you can solve yourself. And most problems, with enough discipline and patience, can be solved by yourself. These rules built the life, the clean apartment, the maintained car, the healthy account, the unbroken employment record. All of it was built on a foundation of self-management so thorough that it became invisible. He doesn't notice it the way a fish doesn't notice water. It's just the medium in which everything operates. The rules served him in his 30s, when the company reorganized and he navigated the politics without an ally. They served him in his 40s, when his father's decline required logistics. He managed from 800 miles away, coordinating doctors and facilities and legal documents over the phone, during lunch breaks, without once asking a colleague for accommodation. They served him last year when a plumbing emergency at 2 a.m. required a clear head, a quick search for an emergency service, and the composure to make a decision about repair versus replacement while standing in an inch of water. These are not small things. These are the moments that reveal the architecture of a person. And his architecture held every time. But architecture that holds under one set of conditions is not guaranteed to hold under all conditions. And the conditions ahead are not the conditions behind. The rules that built the life were designed for a life in which the operator is fully functional. An operator with energy, with mobility, with cognitive sharpness, with the physical capacity to get in the car, drive to the hardware store, carry the materials, do the work, clean up after. An operator who is aging, not declining. Not yet. Aging, which is different from declining only in degree and only for a while. The boundary between aging and declining is not a wall. It's a gradient. And gradients are hard to notice when you're on them because each day looks almost exactly like the day before. The rules don't account for the gradient. They were built for a binary. Either you can handle it or you can't. And as long as the answer is, I can handle it, the rules hold. But the gradient means the answer shifts from I can handle it to I can handle it. But it takes longer to I can handle it, but I'm tired afterward, to I can handle it, but I need to rest the next day, to eventually I can handle it, but I'm not sure I should. That last stage is where the rules become a problem, because the rules say, handle it yourself. And the body says, maybe not this time. And the man who has lived by those rules for 30 years has no protocol for maybe not this time. He has a protocol for doing. He has no protocol for delegating. He has a protocol for solving. He has no protocol for asking. In late life, the same rules that built resilience can reduce it. Every decision stays on one desk. This is a fact he's lived with, so long it doesn't register as a condition. It registers as normal. Medical choices. He makes them. He researches the options, reads the literature, or enough of it to feel informed, asks the doctor the questions he's prepared, and decides. Alone, in the waiting room, in the car afterward, at the kitchen table with the paperwork. Housing decisions. When to repair, when to replace, when to stay, when to consider moving. Whether the second floor will still be practical in 10 years. Whether the neighborhood is changing in ways that affect safety or convenience. Whether the mortgage paid off, in his case, justifies staying in a house that might be more space than one person needs. Timing decisions. When to retire. When to claim Social Security. Whether to take the pension as a lump sum or an annuity. Each of these decisions has implications that cascade through the rest of the plan, and each decision is made by one person, evaluated by one mind, stress-tested against one set of assumptions. Financial decisions. Rebalancing the portfolio. Adjusting the withdrawal rate. Deciding whether to convert traditional IRA funds to Roth. Tax optimization. Estate planning, though estate planning for a man with no spouse and no children has a different texture than the usual version. Paperwork. Insurance renewals. Beneficiary designations. Power of attorney granted to whom? Healthcare proxy assigned to whom? The legal documents that assume someone will be there to act when you can't. The blank lines on the forms where a spouse's name would go. Contingencies. What happens if the car is totaled and he can't drive for a month? What happens if a hospital stay lasts longer than expected and the mail piles up? The bills go unopened. The automatic payments run, but the things that aren't automatic, the furnace filter, the prescription refill, the thing the neighbor mentioned about the tree leaning toward the power line, those things just wait. They wait because there's no one to not wait. Couples distribute cognition. This is not a romantic observation. It's a systems observation. Two people in a household split the cognitive load the way two processors in a computer split the computational load. Not evenly, not always fairly, but functionally. One person holds the medical information. The other holds the financial information. One person manages the social calendar. The other manages the maintenance schedule. The distribution isn't perfect, but it exists, and its existence means that no single point of failure can take down the entire operation. Solo systems concentrate cognition. Every piece of information, every pending decision, every open loop lives in one mind, and minds, like any storage system, have limits. Not dramatic limits, not the kind that produce obvious failure, the kind that produce subtle degradation, slower processing, missed details, deferred decisions that accumulate until the deferral itself becomes a problem. He handles it. He handles all of it. He has always handled all of it. And the handling is evidence of competence. And the competence is evidence of legitimacy. And the legitimacy is the thing that holds the identity together. Which means the handling cannot stop. Because if the handling stops, the competence is in question. And if the competence is in question, the entire identity structure built over decades, maintained through discipline, verified by the account balance, begins to wobble. This is why he doesn't think about what happens when he can't handle it. Not because he's in denial, because the thought is structurally threatening. It doesn't threaten his comfort. It threatens his coherence. Without the feedback loop of work, validation becomes rare and internal. He knows he's competent. He doesn't need anyone to tell him. But there's a difference between knowing something in the absence of evidence and knowing something because the evidence arrives daily. Work provided daily evidence. Every task completed, every problem solved, every day navigated without incident. These were small confirmations that the system was running, that the operator was functioning, that the life was on track. In retirement or in the anticipation of retirement, those confirmations thin out. The apartment doesn't evaluate your performance. The dashboard doesn't grade you. The car doesn't care who maintains it, as long as someone does. The man doesn't fall apart. That's important to be clear about. Men like him don't fall apart. They become more efficient. They tighten the routine. They optimize the system further, because optimizing is what they know how to do, and doing what you know how to do is comforting even when the context is changed. But efficiency without purpose is just compression. You're doing the same things in less time with less reason. And the surplus time, the time that used to be filled by work, becomes a space that the routine cannot fill because the routine was designed to support the work, not to replace it. He fills the time. Projects, reading, maybe a hobby that has the structure of work, without the external validation woodworking, or a systematic approach to something that can be measured and improved. The filling is competent. The filling works. But the filling is maintenance. And somewhere in the back of the mind, the question persists. Maintaining what, exactly? There is a quieter process happening alongside the efficiency. A contraction, not emotional architectural. The social infrastructure of a working life begins to thin. At work, he had proximity. Not friendship, necessarily. Proximity. People in adjacent desks. People in meetings. People in the break room who nodded and said something about the weekend. This proximity required nothing of him. It was ambient. Background-level human contact that he didn't seek out and didn't particularly value. But it was there. In retirement, the proximity stops. The ambient contact disappears. And what remains are the relationships that were actively maintained, which, for a man whose primary maintenance efforts went into systems rather than people, may not be extensive. He has friends, a few, men he sees occasionally, conversations that are comfortable because they are infrequent and structured around activities, a meal, a game, a shared interest. These are real relationships. They have history and weight. But they are event-based. They happen when scheduled. Between events, the days belong to him alone. The texture of those days is worth examining. not to dramatize them. They are not traumatic. They are functional. He gets up. He handles the morning. He works on whatever the day's task is. He eats. He reads or watches something. He sleeps. The day has form. It has sequence. It has a beginning and an end. What it does not have, and what it did not need to have while work provided it, is external purpose. The day serves the man. It does not serve anything beyond him. And a day that serves only its inhabitant, repeated across weeks and months and years, produces a specific kind of narrowing that is invisible from the inside. The narrowing looks like this. The world gets smaller. Not suddenly. Gradually. The radius of daily movement contracts. The range of interactions contracts. The variety of challenges contracts. The routine becomes more refined, more optimized, and more enclosed. Like a river that digs its channel deeper and deeper, but never wider. From the outside, this is stability. From the inside, if he were to examine it, which he has not, because examining it would require a vantage point he doesn't have, it is a slow reduction in the surface area of life. And surface area matters. Surface area is where unexpected things happen, where new information enters, where assumptions get tested by something other than the mind that made them. A life with large surface area encounters friction, surprise, disruption, correction. A life with small surface area encounters mostly itself. He is not there yet. He is still working. The surface area is still maintained by the calendar, the commute, the office, the colleagues. But the projection tool on his laptop isn't just projecting financial futures. It is projecting a life in which the main source of surface area is gone and nothing has been built to replace it. The portfolio grows. The market cooperates this year, this quarter, this month. The number on the dashboard ticks up. The green bar gets a little greener. The projection tool, when he runs it on the base case, shows surplus. But the why doesn't grow. The money is accumulating for a future. But the future is defined primarily by what it avoids: poverty, dependence, indignity, asking. The future is a series of negations. Not broke, not helpless, not a burden, not exposed. A future defined by negation is a vault. It protects, it stores, it secures. But a vault with no named purpose beyond avoiding decline is a vault that serves the anxiety of the present more than the reality of the future. Compare this, for a moment, with the man down the hall at the office. The one who is also 53, also disciplined, also quiet about his finances. But this man has a daughter in graduate school and a son who just bought a house. His retirement planning has a texture that is different in kind. He is not saving to avoid something. He is saving to enable something. The daughter's education, the son's stability, the future trips to see grandchildren who do not exist yet, but whose probability shapes his decisions today. His number on the dashboard means something specific. It means, I can help my daughter if her funding falls through. It means, I can fly to see the grandkids 4 times a year instead of 2. It means, I can leave something that has my name on it and their future in it. The never married man's number means, I will not be a burden. I will not need to ask. I will maintain my position until the position is no longer tenable. Both men are disciplined. Both are responsible. Both are planning for the future. But one man's future has faces in it, and the other's does not. And a future with faces is easier to invest in, not financially, but psychologically, because faces make the future feel real, and real futures generate the motivation to protect them that abstract futures cannot sustain. He doesn't see it this way. The money feels purposeful because managing it feels purposeful. The act of saving, allocating, monitoring these activities have the texture of purpose. But the purpose they serve is circular. Save to be secure to continue saving to maintain the system that provides the sense of security. The loop is tight. The loop works. The loop has worked for decades. And the loop will continue to work right up until the moment when the question secure for what demands a non-circular answer, and the loop has nothing to offer. A thought experiment. Structural, not dramatic. If you couldn't manage your own logistics for 6 months, what would actually happen? 6 months. A recoverable, finite period in which you could not drive, could not manage paperwork, could not make complex decisions reliably, could not maintain the house, could not coordinate your own medical care. Who would step in? Not who could you call. Who would step in without being called? Who has enough information about your system, your accounts, your medications, your insurance, your legal documents, your preferences, your routines, to operate it on your behalf? The answer, for most men in his position, is no one. Not because no one cares, because no one has been given the access. The rules say handle it yourself. The rules say don't burden others. The rules say maintain the system in product. And the consequence of those rules, carried faithfully across decades, is that no one outside the system knows how the system works. A brother might help. A friend might check in. A colleague might notice the absence. But helping and operating are different things. Checking in and managing are different things. The gap between someone would notice and someone could take over is the gap where the architecture fails. Not fails dramatically, fails quietly. Bills unpaid, appointments missed, medications mismanaged. A house that deteriorates at the speed of neglect, which is faster than most people think. A portfolio left unmonitored during a period when monitoring might matter. A set of decisions deferred because no one is authorized to make them, and the one person who could make them is the one person who can't. Consider what happens to the house. A house without daily attention begins to show it within weeks. Mail accumulates. Dust accumulates. The dishes from the last meal before the hospital stay sit in the sink. The trash was not taken out. The lawn was not mowed. The seasonal maintenance gutter cleaning, filter changes, pipe insulation before winter has not happened because the person who does it is in a hospital bed 40 minutes away and no one else knows the schedule. Consider what happens to the finances. The automatic payments continue, which is the one advantage of the system he built, but the non-automatic decisions stall. The insurance company sends a letter requiring a response within 30 days. The property tax bill arrives with a deadline. The investment account triggers a rebalancing alert that goes unread. Each of these is manageable in isolation. Without the operator at the desk, they queue. And queuing, in financial matters, has consequences that compound. Consider what happens to his recovery itself. A man with a partner recovers in a home that is maintained, with meals that are prepared, with someone who drives him to physical therapy and picks up the prescriptions and makes sure the follow-up appointment is scheduled. A man alone recovers in whatever condition the home was in when he left it, eats whatever he can manage, and coordinates his own rehabilitation from a position of reduced capacity. The recovery is slower because the infrastructure supporting it is thinner. 6 months, that's all. And the blank space where the answer should be is not a failure of character. It's a consequence of architecture. An architecture that optimized for control and independence and privacy and dignity, and doing so, created a system with no fallback mode. Independence is not the same as infrastructure. He doesn't sit with this thought experiment. He doesn't need to. The thought experiment sits with him quietly, in the same place where the other structural observations have accumulated, in the space between the dashboard and the man, in the gap between the number and the meaning, in the silence of the kitchen where the coffee cools and the cursor blinks and the machinery runs and the machinery has no backup. The stabilizer wasn't money. It was a roll, and rolls end. And when they end, the thing that replaces them needs to be built before it's needed, not after. A life built on self-reliance still needs a backup plan for the self. The laptop is closed. The kitchen is quiet. The machinery persists, and the question of what continues with it, what holds, what gives, what remains when the single thread finally asks for help. That question is no longer forming. It's formed. It's here. It's waiting for an architecture that can hold it. Security, when you strip away the cultural shorthand, has 3 components. Not 2, not 1, 3. The first is continuity. The life runs even if you pause. Not perfectly perfection isn't the standard, but functionally. The bills get paid, the medications get refilled. The house doesn't deteriorate. The legal documents are accessible. The accounts are monitored. The lights stay on. Continuity means the system has enough embedded instruction that it doesn't require your active presence every single day to avoid failure. The second is delegation. Someone can act when you can't, not someone who might help if asked. Someone who has been designated, informed, and authorized. Someone who knows where the documents are, what the accounts look like, who the doctors are, what the preferences are. Delegation is not dependence. Delegation is the difference between a system that pauses when the operator pauses and a system that continues because the operator planned for the pause. The third is meaning. The future is concrete enough to fund, not abstract, not a vague notion of later, specific enough that the mind treats it as real. A place, a commitment, a person or a set of people whose lives are tangibly connected to yours. A cause that continues whether you're watching or not. Something that makes the word future feel like a location rather than a concept. A retirement account can fund all 3, but a retirement account on its own, is none of them. The structural vulnerability of a solo life is not a character flaw. It's a design feature that needs to be addressed the way any design feature does, not with emotion, but with engineering. A system that only one person can operate is not complete. This statement isn't a criticism. It's a specification. The way an engineer might look at a bridge with one support cable and say, "This cable is strong, the material is sound, the load is within tolerance, but the system has a single point of failure, and single points of failure should be addressed." Addressing them doesn't mean adding a spouse. It doesn't mean moving in with someone. It doesn't mean fundamentally restructuring the life. It means identifying the places where the system depends entirely on one person's continuous functioning and creating default pathways for those places. Default pathways. Not emergency plans locked in a drawer. Defaults. Things that happen automatically when the primary process is interrupted. The way a server switches to a backup when the main goes down, not because someone runs into the server room and flips a switch, but because the switch was configured in advance. What does this look like in a life? It looks like a power of attorney granted to someone who understands the scope of it. It looks like a healthcare proxy given to someone who knows your preferences, not just your name. It looks like a financial advisor or a trust officer who has standing access, not emergency access, to the accounts and the plan. It looks like a neighbor or a friend or a paid professional who checks in on a schedule, not on a crisis. It looks like a system that was designed by someone who assumed the operator might not always be available, which is a different design philosophy than the one most solo men use. Most solo men design their systems around the assumption that the operator will always be available, because the operator always has been available, until the day the operator isn't. The principle is simple. A system that only you can operate is not complete. Completing it doesn't require giving up control. It requires building control into the structure itself, so that control persists even when the controller needs a break. There's a transformation available here, and it doesn't require a personality change. It doesn't require vulnerability in the therapeutic sense. It doesn't require opening up or letting people in, or any of the phrases that make men like him instinctively reach for the door. The transformation is this: competence expands. For decades, competence meant handling everything alone. That was the definition. And it was a valid definition, and it produced a valid life. And the evidence is on the dashboard in verified digits. But competence has another definition, a more mature one. Not more enlightened, more mature. The way a senior engineer's understanding of a system is more mature than a junior engineer's, not because the junior is wrong, but because the senior has seen what happens over time. The more mature definition of competence is this: building a system that runs without your ego in the room. A system that runs without your ego means a system where the question, "Who handles this?" has an answer that isn't always me. It means the documents are organized so that someone else can find them. It means the accounts are structured so that someone else can access them. It means the preferences are recorded so that someone else can honor them. It means the load is distributed, not because you're weak, but because distributed loads survive longer than concentrated ones. This preserves dignity. It is still responsibility. It is still discipline. It is still the same man who maxed out his 401k and maintained his car and managed his father's care from 800 miles away. It's just that the discipline has matured from I handle everything to I designed a system that handles everything, including the parts I might not be able to handle later. That's not surrender. That's engineering. A shared future does not require a spouse. This is worth saying plainly because the cultural narrative leaves very little room for it. The cultural narrative says, your future is shared through family, spouse, children, grandchildren. These are the people who carry your story forward, who witness your aging, who receive the inheritance, who visit on holidays, who hold your hand in the hospital. And for millions of people, that's true. And for the man in the kitchen with the coffee and the dashboard, it's not the available architecture. So the question is not, how do I get the architecture I don't have? The question is, how do I build continuity with the architecture I do have? The answer is named recipients of your continuity, not abstractions, names. A nephew who would benefit from a structured educational fund, a community organization that depends on annual contributions and would miss them if they stopped, a friend's family where you are uncle, not by blood, but by presence, and where your involvement has a shape and a history and a weight that would leave a gap if it vanished, a mentoring relationship, a professional society, a local institution, a library, a clinic, a school where your support is known and counted on. These are not replacements for a family. They are not consolation prizes. They are the infrastructure of meaning for a life that doesn't follow the default template. And they do something that the retirement account alone cannot do. They make the future specific. Specific futures are easier to fund, not financially, emotionally. A man who is saving for an abstract later is saving out of anxiety. A man who is saving so that the library renovation gets completed, or the nephew's tuition is covered, or the annual camping trip with his friend's kids continues. That man is saving for something he can picture. And things you can picture feel real. And things that feel real are worth protecting. The future becomes specific enough to feel real. The money becomes fuel for something that exists outside the dashboard. And the dashboard, for the first time, has a purpose that isn't circular. There is a practical dimension to this that deserves plain language. Building a system that outlasts your daily effort does not require a dramatic overhaul. It requires a series of small, deliberate acts that a disciplined man is already equipped to perform. The same temperament that researched index fund expense ratios can research estate planning attorneys. The same attention that tracked portfolio allocation can track the legal documents that ensure someone can act on his behalf. The same consistency that posted automatic contributions for 19 years can establish a recurring check-in with a trusted person, not because crisis is imminent, but because the system works better with a monitoring function that isn't solely internal. He does not need to become a different person. He needs to apply the same person to a different set of problems. The financial system was built with foresight. He didn't wait for poverty to start saving. He started saving because he could see the trajectory. The operational system, the system that keeps the life running when the operator is compromised, requires the same foresight, the same willingness to act before the need is visible, the same discipline that says, I will build this not because I need it today, but because I can see the day when I will. This is where dignity is preserved, not through pretending the need won't come, through addressing it the way he has addressed every other structural challenge in his life, calmly, systematically, and in advance. The man who builds a backup system is not admitting weakness. He is demonstrating the same engineering competence that built the primary system. A bridge designer who adds redundant cables is not confessing doubt in the first set. He is completing the design. And a life designed to function even when the designer needs rest, that is not a diminished life. It is a more complete one. The completeness is the achievement, the acknowledgement that the operator is human, that humans are finite, that finite systems need structural support. This acknowledgement is not a concession. It is the final act of competence. The goal is not to feel safe. It is to be structurally protected. The central loop resolves here, not with a flourish, with a fact. The retirement number didn't feel secure because it was treated as an identity verdict. It was asked to answer the question, am I legitimate? And that's a question a number cannot answer, no matter how many digits it has. It is not a verdict. It is fuel. The number is fuel. It powers a system. And a system needs three things to function: continuity, delegation, and meaning. The man who built the account was doing the right thing. The discipline was real. The sacrifice was real. The result is real. But the result was treated as an endpoint when it is actually a resource. An endpoint says, you're done. A resource says, now what will you build? The shift from endpoint to resource is not a personality change. It's an accounting change, a reallocation. The same discipline that built the balance can build the system around the balance. The same thoroughness that researched index funds and expense ratios can research power of attorney structures, healthcare proxies, community involvement, and the operational logistics of aging well alone. Planning for support is not surrender. It's engineering, the same engineering that built the account, applied to a different problem, with the same rigor and the same composure. The dashboard is still open, same kitchen, same counter, same coffee. The number hasn't changed. 1,000,000 and some. Green. Verified. But the man looking at it has shifted. Not dramatically. Not in any way the dashboard would register. The shift is in the frame. The cultural script said, hit this number and the uncertainty ends. The real system says, uncertainty is managed, not eliminated. And management is not a moment of arrival. Management is a practice, ongoing, adjusted, maintained, like the car, like the apartment, like the life. The number is still the number. It's still strong. It still represents decades of showing up, of discipline, of saying no to things so that this line on this screen could exist. That evidence is unchanged. What's changed is the question the number is being asked to answer. It was asked, "Am I safe?" And it said, "Probably, under favorable conditions." And that answer wasn't wrong. It was incomplete. Because safety, real, structural, lasting safety, is not a number. It's a system. And a system needs more parts than a balance. It needs continuity. Someone or something that keeps the operation running when the operator pauses. It needs delegation. Authority that transfers cleanly to a person who knows what to do with it. It needs meaning. A future specific enough to be worth the fuel it will require. The man at the counter finishes his coffee, closes the laptop. The screen goes dark. The number is still there, behind the dark screen, doing what numbers do, sitting, waiting, ready to be used. The question is no longer, is it enough? The question is, enough for what? And for the first time, that question has the beginning of an answer, not a complete answer. Complete answers are for brochures, but a beginning, a direction, a sense that the number, this clean, hard-earned, carefully maintained number, is not the end of something. It's the material, the raw material for a structure that hasn't been built yet. A structure that includes the parts the dashboard doesn't track, the parts that can't be automated or compounded or projected on a screen, the parts that require not just discipline, but design. He puts the cup in the cabinet, same shelf, same position, picks up the keys, walks to the car. A retirement number is not security. Security is a system that remains functional when you are not. The system is not complete, but the architect is aware now. And awareness, in a man who has built everything he's ever built through deliberate action, is not a feeling. It's a blueprint.